2004, there were consultations in Riyadh between the US and Russia. The Russian side was represented by Mr. Karasin and advisor Sergei Beseda. They talked about the grain initiative. An important outcome was that the US committed to help the agricultural and grain to end up on the international markets, wider access of Russian ships and vessels to international ports, and payments. We are grateful for this. We expect that sanction restrictions will be lifted from Bank and other financial organizations that ensure operations in international trade in fertilizers. We expect them to be put on the SWIFT system again. After all these actions are taken, we will be able to reach security agreements in the Black Sea, non-use of violence, and no use of vessels for military purposes. To do so, such vessels will be checked. It is important to ensure security guarantees to cover the Crimean facilities, including the Kerch Bridge, and the country. The president reconfirmed the agreement between the presidents to cease strikes on energy infrastructure. There is a list of facilities that are considered as energy infrastructure. We hope that all the agreements will be fulfilled, and thanks to the US, the Russian agricultural export will be unlocked. I can also say that the expert consultations or expert delegations will be continued. Thank you very much. Thanks to you. I hope that I answered you in great detail. If you have any more questions, so I can give you the answers. Is the Rata agency with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon. We are here. We have a couple of questions about Russia-China, or Russia-US relations, and the green initiative that you commented on in great detail just now. As to Russia and the US, within the contacts, did Russia receive any positive signals from Washington in terms of an agreement of reduction of strategic arms that can substitute the New START treaty that is expiring next year? Right now, I remember I answered you once. For now, I have nothing to add to my previous answer. Probably it's worth asking this to our counterparts from State Department, because I see you're interested in the US position. Probably they would be more equipped to answer your question. We don't have any news regarding this. Thank you. Question 2, or part of it, because you named Russia's requirements to renew this initiative. the things that were discussed in Riyadh about agricultural products. It is going to be a new agreement, or is it going to be a prolongation of memorandum that expires in July this year? These are questions that are being discussed right now. Thank you. Is the Moscow Post with us? Yes. Good afternoon. We have two questions today. First, Armenia is set to activize its work in international organizations. Probably they want to balance geopolitical risks after the change of administration in the U.S. What are the relations between Russia and Yerevan?
Well, that's quite an interesting and strange question. What are you talking about, to be exact? Because if you have specific details, it would be easier for me to understand what you are asking about, because overall, talking about our bilateral relations, we continue to develop a multifaceted political dialogue. Leaders of the two countries are staying in contact. Nikol Pashinyan has accepted the invitation to visit Moscow to take part in the events on the 80th anniversary of the victory, and that they've stated that recently there have been constructive negotiations between the ministers of foreign affairs, and recently there were substantive consultations between deputy heads of Russian and Armenian foreign ministries. Russia and Armenia have intergovernmental and interparliamentary mechanisms. So there is an active interagency cooperation. There was a roundtable on the issue of agro-industrial complex that is being organized by the Chamber of Industry and Commerce of Russia and Russia-Armenian Business Council. There are some initiatives in the Cultural Humanitarian Educational Center, and the Armenian delegation is going to pay a visit to the Educational Center Sirius, which is going to accelerate the opening in Yermak of the Russian Educational Center for gifted children. We are developing economic ties as well. Our bilateral trade has reached a record high and was estimated at $12 billion, and the relevant economic agencies are developing measures to sustainably increase investment cooperation between our countries. And I believe that Yerevan feel the practical output from their cooperation in the Eurasian integration project and realize its significance for the social and economic stability and security of their country. We are working together at other international venues, at the United Nations in particular. Our approaches on global agenda are similar or converge. Yerevan traditionally supports and co-sponsors the majority of Russian resolutions that pertain to countering glorification of Nazism. There is still potential for our work. There are some moments in our work that are not yet resolved or not addressed, that should be adjusted, though that these moments wouldn't damage bilateral relations. Not talking about bilateral relations from the point of view of the political science, but relations between peoples, business structures, and peoples of Russia and Armenia. That's why we're discussing these questions, and I hope that we'll make progress in addressing them. Thank you. And I have a second question for you. Biden administration tried to censor information from Russia and Russian opinions on what's going on in the world. No. The Biden administration destroyed, as you said, Russian sources of information. They blocked, they destroyed Russian sources of information. They deleted the personal accounts of Russian journalists in Western social media. They demolished all of that. It's still difficult for Russian journalists to get American visas to work there. It's difficult even for them to get visas to go to the United States for a short-term period. They have bullied Russian journalists, and you are saying that they censored them. Well, censorship, it is when they are trying to remove or to delete some elements of information, when they are trying to play it down, to add some other information, to add some comments to the publication. But they have actually been destroying everything that is connected to Russia. And they have publicly stated that as an element of their policy. The Biden administration has accused the Russian media space of orchestrating changes in the political life of the United States. It was real bullying of Russian journalists with offensive operations, I would say, were organized against the Russian citizens and the Russian journalists. Please don't downplay it. And I'm talking about what the United States did on their own territory, let alone what they did in other countries when they used various mechanisms and made political regimes of some countries to take anti-Russian steps in the media sphere. Yes, that's what I was referring to, but Donald Trump promised to restore the freedom of speech in the U.S., but the representative of the U.S. State Department stated that the U.S. are not going to stop efforts to fight the Russian media, including Sputnik RT. What's your stance on that? We regret their position. We will help and support our journalists in their work, and we have legitimate rights for that because they're enshrined in international law, and these provisions are also enshrined in the American law. Unacceptability of censorship, upholding freedom of speech, these are the principles that we stick to. If journalists don't violate the national law, no obstacles should be put to their work. Thank you. Thank you. News.ru, please. Hello, Ms. Zakharova. Hello. News.ru, Mikhail Rosen. We have 2 questions. Several Russian journalists were killed or wounded as a result of the Ukrainian attacks. And in summer last year, when the reporter of our media outlet, Nikita Tsitsagi, was killed as a result of that attack, and he called on international organizations, including UNESCO, to condemn the actions of Kiev. Was your appeal successful? Have you received any response from UNESCO? But there are more victims, and is there any hope that international institutions will stop their silence? Mr. Lavrov has provided quite sincere assessments on the actions of Director General of UNESCO, Audrey Azoulay. He stated that she is involved in the killings of journalists because she does not deliver on her mandate, and she is an accomplice in the information war against our country and the war against the truth. Every day, we are trying to get the response of UNESCO and some other relevant institutions in the United Nations and OSCE. We're trying to make the international community aware of the situation so that we wouldn't let Western-oriented international officials to put it under the rug, to give meaningless and empty comments about it. And we are helped by many media outlets who realized that it's not a problem of their colleagues, but it's a common problem that affects everyone. This Union of the Journalists of Russia, regional associations of journalists have joined this work. And under this truly public pressure of international scale, Director General makes comments, and after our constant reminders that it is unacceptable to sabotage the mandate, Azule condemned the killing of your colleague, journalist Nikita Tsitsagin, cameraman Valery Kozhin. However, she made unacceptable comments because she said that they were killed at a areas temporarily occupied by the Russian forces. But it should be mentioned that the issues of the security, sovereignty, and territorial integrity fall beyond the scope of UNESCO, but she decided to speak about it and make comments, but nonetheless, she condemned the killing of Russian journalists, the killing of your colleague. At the same time, we noted that the statement of the Director General of UNESCO makes a sporadic statements, and it is not normal to work like that, take into account that she is the Director General and that she works in the UNESCO Secretariat. When they wake up, I don't mean that they sleep. Actually, it means that they are waiting and they believe that they can keep silence for a moment. And under the pressure of Western and Russophobic figures, they cannot fulfill their obligations, but we won't let that happen. I cannot say that the situation is being properly managed by UNESCO, but we'll do our best. Audrey Azoulay has demonstrated its biased nature when she published a report on security and safety of journalists, where no word has been said about the killings of Russian journalists that were killed by the Kiev regime. At that time, report has caused an outrage all over the globe. Numerous appeals were made to Azoulay. Many media outlets and organizations appealed to her. Russia and many other countries have condemned the biased work of the international official at the 34th Intergovernmental Board of the International Program for the Development of Communications in November-December in Paris. And we have required explanations from the UNESCO Secretariat about the methodology of collecting data on the killings of journalists. And it has provided quite dubious explanations, so according to which such methodology was not discussed with member states, and it was approved by the Secretariat in a secret way, and we are not okay with that, because such situation undermines the intergovernmental nature of UNESCO as a special body of the UN system. And we will continue to pose all the questions to the Secretariat and Audrey Azoulay personally, and we'll make sure that we'll get substantive responses from them. The document of USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development, speaks about it a lot. There is liberal regimes, liberal dictatorships allocated money for NGOs. NGOs collected some information and provided it to the intergovernmental and international organizations. They referred to information provided by the so-called civil society, provided biased information. The countries of the West are paying for such statements or for the lack of such statements. Director General is pandering to the Kiev regime and Western patrons, and her behavior has become a disgrace. She won't be able to keep silence anymore because her inactions leads to further killings of journalists. Together with like-minded countries, we'll make sure that the Director General will deliver on her mandate, and we have hopes with the upcoming changes in the leadership of the UNESCO Secretariat. As you know, elections of the new Director General will be organized in November, and we hope that what Azule has turned UNESCO in will become a lesson for many candidates, and they won't repeat her mistakes. Thank you, Ms. Zakharova. We have another question for you. Speaker of the Armenian Parliament, Alen Semanyan, stated that Yerevan cannot constantly have tensions in its relations with Russia. Earlier, the Armenian newspaper Graparak stated that the head of the Armenian government, Nikol Pashinyan, instructed to develop closer relations with Russia. Are there any signs that there is a thaw in relations between Russia and Armenia? And earlier I have explained and provided the details of the Russia-Armenia bilateral relations. In some aspects, we have to bring our relations to a new level. Certain steps should be taken. Dialogue should be constructive and meaningful. It shouldn't be nuanced. It should be about feelings or senses. We had amazing relations with Armenia. In the historical context, nothing other could have developed to take into account the history of our relations. We are developing humanitarian contexts that are not artificial but rather natural. Given the geography, given the history, we are destined to develop relations with Armenia. Yes, there will be those who won't welcome the development of relations between Russia and Armenia, but our position is determined by the doctrine documents, by the Russian president, and it is aimed at the full-fledged development of relations with Armenia and with the people of Armenia. Thank you, Ms. Zakharova. Thank you. Izvestia, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. Is Vestia finished already? After E, please. I'm sorry, Ms. Zakharova. Izvestia didn't speak yet. We had two questions for you, if you allow, and they sound similar to what our colleague said and to what you said earlier, but if you allow, we would like to go back to them. Our war correspondent, Alexander Fedorchak, together with other colleagues, was killed on duty. At the same time, he observed all international requirements that journalists should observe at on the battlefield. Is it possible from the diplomatic point of view to get universal, global recognition that the journalists were killed as a result of an act of terrorism launched by the Kiev regime? I believe that our law enforcement agencies should have their say and to carry out investigation. That's what they are doing, taking into account the statement made by the relevant structures. They should make a conclusion because they are qualified to do so, and they should qualify these actions. These terrorist acts per se, but after the law enforcement agencies carry out their work, they will provide the legal qualifications for that. As for international organizations, you understand that the situation in the recent years has shown that what a whole range of countries has been expressing their principles position, it wasn't their principles position, it was actually an attempt to obstruct the making of agreements in many other tracks. And when it came to real human rights and real freedom of speech and safety of journalists, they all became silent. And that's how it affects secretariats of many international organizations.
So we should seek the reaction of international structures, but we should not think that it is them who will implement this in good faith or based on some morale. It's lacking there with unfriendly countries, with unfriendly regimes. Those regimes, they have no conscience, no morale. And the functionaries of secretariats, international organizations representing those unfriendly regimes, having their nationality or just supporting their policy, we should make them work. Just to wait until their conscience wake up. It's not necessary, I think, because we need to do our best in order to make them perform their duties. And the time of that idealistical perception of international structures where they are obliged, according to their mandate, to do that themselves without any obligation, it does not work that way for a whole number of reasons. We have mentioned them repeatedly. Yes, that should be the case, but there is the reality. It's not the case, actually, so we should strengthen our work. So if you allow me, let us return to the issue of Russian-American talks. Based on your recent experience with the American delegation, can we talk about the new level in those negotiations? So let us just not give some emotional assessments, additional assessments. Just let us assess every concrete steps. There were contacts in negotiations in Riyadh. We have discussed them in detail, what was planned, what was actually done, what we can qualify as positive, what remains to be done, but to be talking about some quality assessments of bilateral relations, it's the prerogative of the head of the state. Thank you very much. Is Author I with us? Yes, hello, Ruslan Perkratov, Author I. Hello from Kaliningrad. Today we are with you. We have a question about the Federal Republic of Germany. Their Ministry of Internal Affairs, according to some data, started to recruit mercenaries from Afghan migrants who have committed a military crime, and they have little choice either to be subject to punishment in Germany and then be deported to Afghanistan as a guarantee, or to sign a contract and to become part of the International Legion of the Territory Defense in Ukraine. According to some data, there are more than 2,000 people like that. Our question is as follows. Do you think that Germany here directly violates the International Convention against the recruitment, use, financing and training of mercenaries adopted by the UN General Assembly Resolution 44/34 of the 4th of December 1989? It was rather not a question, but some declaration from you, some statement. I would like to deal with checked information. Of course, you can work with any information in asking your questions, but we need some data that has been confirmed, so I would refrain from any conclusions of this account and take some time in order to check thoroughly. The second part of this question, I would like to say that Germany is a part of all the universal treaties in international humanitarian law, and in particular to be guided by the clauses on mercenarism that are contained in Geneva Convention of 1949. And Germany has also signed but not ratified the International Convention Against Recruitment, Use, Financing and Training of Mercenaries of 1989. So I would like to highlight that mercenaries are not legal participants in hostilities and do not fall within the scope of the 1949 Geneva Convention. So they are guilty not only of violating international law, national legislation, but they are responsible with the families of those people who are sent to support the neo-Nazi Kiev regime. They have just two options. The first one, to go to jail. The second one is to be killed. Of course, there is also the third option, to change their mind and not to go there. Thank you. Thank you. Is Anna Lu with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. Am I audible? Yes. Our question, U.S. President Donald Trump recently at a press conference said that Russia and Ukraine, quote, will meet on a ceasefire in the Black Sea, and other countries will be involved in the process of monitoring the ceasefire. When and at what level is such a meeting planned, and which countries were they talking about? I think it's better to ask the American side. He was talking about the outcome of the meeting in Riyadh that the Russian side has also commented. I have already mentioned that about the third countries and the work to be done, our experts, delegations, groups, to continue those contacts. That is meant there. Thank you. Thank you. Is Lenta Dot, are you with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova, colleagues. I have the following question. The Russian delegation in Riyadh said that Russian-American talks will continue, and also the UN will participate there, and other countries. So could you name those countries? It's not just some guesses. It's about the outcome of the agreements that will be reached. The meeting has just finished. They have returned from Riyadh. Assessment has been provided for the results. The work will be continued, and we will share the results with you. It's not about some guesses. Thank you. Is Belarus Info with us? Belarus Info. Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. Yes, Belarus Info. We have also question about Riyadh meeting. Sergei Lavrov just yesterday commented on the Black Sea initiative. He mentioned the previous initiative that has been disrupted, made some quotations. What is the assessment of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the figure of Zelensky? How legitimate is he to reach some agreements? Because now the US is the mediator and separately negotiates with Ukraine and with Russia. And if Zelensky is illegitimate, with whom can Russia negotiate on the Ukrainian side? Or is it only the US at this stage? And what guarantees can be provided for the implementation of this initiative? And on what can be based in order to trust Ukraine? So I have misheard, I think, because it's just some repetition. Because you quote Mr. Lavrov interview where he just spoke about that. He said, it was a quotation, that Zelensky, he's just feeling his end. So your question is, how legitimate is he, whether he can be trusted? I think you can just write a scientific work about his legitimacy. The problems of the legitimacy is just mentioned in Ukraine itself. Just inventing some new aspects. How to keep this construction afloat. The replies to these questions about doubts about the legitimacy, they have been provided at all levels. There is no trust here, no trust at all, because they just lie about literally everything. Even about what has been agreed upon with those who have sponsored them for all those years. Now I have just provided a lot of information how Zelensky lied even about statements by Hollande and Merkel that they were not going to implement the Minsk agreements, and now he's just talking about being deceived by Russia after the Minsk agreements. So what trust do you mean? I would draw your attention to Minister Lavrov regularly addressing this issue and repeatedly highlights that it's not about trust, not about faith or hope in something, not being deceived, but about strong guarantees that will be accepted by our country. I will just be returning to this issue, but you also read this, you see this. We have not changed this position in any way. We are conducting the work. With whom and how, you see that, I think. These are the issues to be resolved. And the last part of the question, could you repeat that? Yes. So the initiative is concluded, and Russia takes responsibility for its implementation. Which initiative? The Black Sea Initiative. So on the side of Ukraine, what are we to be based on in order to trust regarding the implementation? I would return you to the statement by Sergei Lavrov, talking that the handlers in Washington should do their part of the work to handle that monster the previous administration has nurtured. He's just said that in his interview. So now we can just conduct negotiations with the US, not with the Ukrainian side. Yes, Russia has contacts with the American delegation, with American representatives, because Zelensky has just forbidden to conduct negotiations with our country, forbidden to himself. And not everyone survived after the negotiations that took place. The Kiev regime was exterminating those negotiations from its side. So we cannot unblock that ban on conducting the negotiations. It has no solution now. They have blocked that opportunity for themselves. Thank you, Madam Zakharova, for your detailed reply. Is Bolt News with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. Thank you for such a possibility to ask a question. How can you comment on the conduction in Bucharest of the Black Sea Forum with calls for war against Russia and its destruction? It's not really a meeting, it's some gathering and organized by non-governmental organizations controlled by special services and as well as Ukrainian special services who are controlled by the West. So we just see the nature of those NGOs. On the other hand, this meeting is very interesting. That hysteria that was there is just reflects the desperation of some circles against the background of the obvious defeat of the Kiev regime. And Romania providing a platform to those aggressive structures, undermining the territorial integrity of our country. And Romanian officials just participating there is just a provocative episode, anti-Russia campaign guided by the EU and conducted by Bucharest. On one hand, the Romanian authorities talk about peace and stability in the region. On the other hand, they just give the country to those who turn it into an instrument of turning into an instrument of international tension. It has nothing to do with national sovereignty. In the Romanian society itself, it's critically assessed. So the conclusion, why a significant part of the Romanian society is more and more decisive about their opinion about the correction of the political line. It's more and more clear. Thank you. Is News Front with us? Yes, one question connected with international structures and their reaction on the Ukrainian regime crimes. Was there an official OSCE reaction on the Ukrainian drone attack on Moscow after OSCE Secretary General Feridun Siniroglu came to Moscow and witnessed the consequences of the attack? If there was a reaction, what was that? And if not, how can you explain its absence? Yes, there was a reaction on the outcome of the talks with Minister Lavrov on the 11th of March. It was a joint press conference with the OSCE Secretary General. Is Vestnik Kavkaza with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. Armenian Parliament Speaker Mr. Simonan said that Yerevan does not plan to return to trilateral format, Russia, Azerbaijan and Armenia, to unblock communication. This topic was discussed during a telephone conversation between Sergei Lavrov and Erat Mirzayan. How does Russia plan to further work in resolving this issue of unblocking communication? So I would remind that the leaders of our three countries, they assigned this issue to deputy prime ministers in charge. In Armenia, this issue is handled by not by the political figure you mentioned, but by another person. So you need to address Yerevan whether they have been changed in the implementation of this issue. If not, you need to address the person in charge of this issue. You know, I do not want to comment on a specific statement by a specific person. It's just not his scope. It's assessment and request by the Armenian leadership, and the resolution of this task trilaterally reached during the period between 2020 and 2022 was the creation of a specialized trilateral working group on unblocking transport and economic ties in the South Caucasus. It was about the restoration of technical parameters, transport route between Armenia and Azerbaijan on the basis of principles of reciprocity and sovereignty. We see the destructive influence of Western countries. We also see the position of the Armenian authorities sometimes And in many cases, it just causes questions. And those two factors, cooperation within the group, it's stalled. We have repeatedly commented on that, and the earlier resumption of full-fledged cooperation in the mentioned trilateral group, it will contribute to the restoration of South Caucasus transport system, to feed it into larger scale schemes for transporting cargoes from Europe to Asia and back, and ensure the further social economic development of both Armenia and the region as a whole. Thank you.
If the positions of the official Yerevan changed, that it's up to them, and it would be right for them to declare the level necessary for that. Is Virelk with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I would like to continue talking about Mr. Simonyan. On March 25th, while talking to journalists, he mentioned the CSTO and the position of Armenia and relations with Russia in general. I would like for you to comment on this. And what can I comment on? Probably it would be better for official Yerevan to comment on this and to separate what's the official statement and what's his personal opinion. When the official Yerevan comments on it, we'll understand what we're dealing with the personal position, or with political position, or with the official state policy. He said he talked that it was an official policy and the approach hasn't changed. But from what moment you see you are giggling at this, so there's no use commenting on this. Then I have a question to Madam Zakharova. The Parliament of Armenia adopted in its first and the final reading a bill allowing Armenia to join the EU. What's your opinion? The opinion was expressed many times at various levels. If I put it briefly to remind you, because the representatives of the administration of the president talked about it in greater detail, and those in charge in this direction, Vice President Mr. Ovechuk, he gave explanations with facts, figures, and so on. But briefly, the EU membership and Eurasian Economic Union cannot overlap. It's up to a person, but these things in terms of agreements made in these associations, they are unfortunately contradicting and not overlapping. Thank you. Thanks to you. Let's move on. Is Tavria TV company with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have a question about negotiations in Riyadh. The Ukrainian delegation to negotiations with the US again arrived in military uniform, both in Russia and in Ukraine. It was called a circus. We have a question. Are there any rules of dress code for such cases, probably unspoken ones, and why does the Kyiv region behave like this? You know, usually when you receive an invitation for an official event by some country, an official dinner or ceremony. When one country invites diplomats or delegations for an event, dress code is mentioned. When we're talking about negotiation process, some things are go without speaking, and for additional events, there's a mark concerning dress code. It mentions the type of clothes expected to be worn. There are unified understandings in protocol. There is certain common understanding of how it works. And this dress code mentioned also provides for the ability for a person to dress into the national costume. I have an impression that the Kiev regime, this militarized uniform, it's not a military uniform. In many cases, those are just variations of military uniform. It's kind of a game. And what we see is not a military uniform indeed, or sometimes civilians wear military uniform who have nothing to do with the military service. And the Kiev regime see it as a part not of a national dress code, not a national costume, but a symbolism of their own sect that they created. I have an impression that it will go down in history like this, that the Kiev regime worked out a specialized system of symbols, and one of them is a militarized uniform. Thank you very much, Madam Zakharova. Thanks to you. Is Русский вектор стратегического назначения with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon. We have two questions. Question one. Journalists of Zvezda TV channel and Zvest media outlet were killed by the American HIMARS MLRS, and Banza back in 2022 said the HIMARS targeting is enabled by the American military satellites. Will the Russian MFA go into send a note of protest to the U.S. government? We say at all levels that Western supplies lead to killings of civilians. The Western supplies, I don't have information in which year these arms were supplied, but I have an impression that majority of these armaments were supplied by the U.S. I don't think that public statements are not weaker in this regard. But there's a question to the American public society why they keep silence, why they care so much about nuances. What happened 100 years ago? Who's looked at somebody else, and how, why some irrelevant, almost irrelevant tweet or message in the social network with a photo can become a reason to wipe out a person from the media sphere, and supplies of armaments by regimes and people in the USA do not cause the American public and NGOs a certain response. One of the questions I mentioned today, the NGOs and the American public was paid by the US aid, and the current administration closed this down, and the new public hasn't been shaped, who work not for money but because they want to become guarantors and care about human rights. Question 2. Russia is going to be a threat for the interests of the US in long term, according to the American reconnaissance. Sergei Lavrov, while commenting on negotiations in Riyadh, said that peace guarantees can come solely as a result of an order to Zelensky from Washington. You called on not to wait breakthroughs from negotiations between Russia and the US. 150 civilians were affected over the last week, and the information space speaks about hybrid information, proxy war. In reality, there's a real war between the US and Russia. Probably Commander-in-Chief should have all the authority given this. And what is the question? What was that? The question, let's call a spade a spade. We have a hot war without, we call it a hybrid war. Are you confused with this name, with this word? Hybrid, you say hybrid? I just don't understand your question. Look, we ask such a question because all the country demands extraordinary authority to President Putin. So please address your question to administration of President. Thank you. Thanks to you. Is Tverskaya 13 with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We had 2 questions, but you answered them in great detail. Thanks to you, so we don't have questions. Is the compatriots journal together with us? Madam Zakharova, good afternoon. Good afternoon. A tragic event, the killing of our journalist, caused wide response and concerned many. For example, international movement of Russophiles responded and said and expressed its position in a declaration. They say that it is unacceptable to strike civilians. It violates international law. The movement of Russophiles made open statements. We are outraged that no Western media officially responded and condemned this terror attack against Russian media representatives. Question to you, are there any more international organizations, public organizations that condemned this crime of the Kiev regime? I can say that we're grateful for everyone who responded. There are a lot of people who responded. From I saw among the first statements from our Belarus colleagues. Thank you for your solidarity. I saw other responses, and I think that we're going to prepare a list of these statements. We believe that in this case, it's a point of no return. Those more relevant NGOs who deal in the international contacts of freedom of speech and freedom of journalists do not condemn the killings of Russian journalists, won't have the right to talk about it anymore. This is the point of no return. The international organization, we will demand from the international organizations, because they live off taxpayers from various countries, and it's their work for them, for these organizations, and we will demand them to fulfill this work. As to the NGOs, what can we demand from them? It's an issue whether we consider them seriously or not. And every time when they say about their responsibilities, will say that they cannot act. If there are no questions, then goodbye. Thank you.